Meanwhile, they also keep star running back Saquon Barkley.
When you franchise tag a player, that entire $32 million would have been sitting on this year's salary cap.
They've got up to the middle of July to do a long-term deal with Saquon Barkley. Otherwise, he's got to play on the one-year tag. I know that they would much prefer this to be done much sooner.
The New York Giants had a lot of decisions to make in the offseason, and for the most part, those decisions are officially behind them. However, their most important player appears to be very frustrated at the decision that they decided to make. As a result, his career with the New York Giants is in jeopardy. Before we get to the content, we are running a huge giveaway on my Twitter account where we're giving away $100 to 3 of my followers that retweet my latest tweet. And now that we get all that out of the way, break! Some of the green slips you guys have been sending me is crazy. Like $1,250 off of a $250 slip, or $1,500 off of a $150 power play. We've been making bank off of our basketball picks, bro. March Madness was a huge success, and believe me, we're about to ramp it up for the NBA playoffs. All you have to do is download Prize Picks, use my promo code Mikerophone, and they'll match your first deposit up to $100 instantly. After that, just follow me on Instagram. I post all of my picks onto my Instagram story for free, and we can start making money off of these picks together. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? This was a very pivotal offseason for the New York Giants, primarily because one of their biggest decisions, something that they've been struggling with over the past 6 to 7 years, was finding the head coach to succeed, Tom Coughlin. And ever since then, it has been an absolute poop fest in trying to find his successor. I mean, immediately after Ben McAdoo would go ahead and succeed him, and that was a huge mess. Following Ben McAdoo, they brought in Pat Shurmur. When Pat Shurmur didn't work out, they decided to bring in Joe Judge. Joe Judge was also a disaster. So they finally decided to bring the man that was credited with the development of one of the most raw quarterback prospects we've seen in recent memory, Brian Daboll. Brian Daboll is often credited in helping Josh Allen becoming the player he is today, and as a result, the New York Giants ended up hiring him in the offseason last year. That wasn't without controversy, by the way. If you remember, there was this whole thing about Bill Belichick texting Brian Flores, congratulating him about winning the job with the New York Giants. When Brian Flores found out that Bill Belichick accidentally texted the wrong Brian and texted Brian Flores over Brian Daboll, it turned into Brian Flores eventually suing the NFL. But for the New York Giants, they without a doubt hit on the head coaching hire of Brian Daboll. Brian Daboll ended up taking Daniel Jones, whose career was in jeopardy, if we're being honest, and you could tell his career was in jeopardy as a result of the New York Giants declining his fifth-year option, and turned him into one of the most promising QBs in the NFL. I mean, the year before Brian Daboll came to town, Daniel Jones had very pedestrian statistics, throwing for 10 touchdowns and 7 interceptions in 2021, 11 touchdowns and 10 interceptions in 2020. But this past year, he had his highest passer rating and QB rating of his career. And when you consider the fact that Daniel Jones was able to achieve this with an extremely thin wide receiver group that included the Giants trading away Kadarius Toney, trotting out the corpse of Kenny Golladay out there, dealing with an injury to Sterling Shepard, and it makes Daniel Jones's achievements all the more impressive. So going into the offseason, there was a huge question about how much Daniel Jones truly worth, because an extension was definitely on the table after seeing this improvement, despite the fact that the New York Giants didn't really put a lot of good weapons around Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones was even able to win a playoff game against the Minnesota Vikings. So going into the offseason, there were a lot of decisions to make. The easiest one being what to do with Kenny Golladay. They literally announced Kenny Golladay could be released 2 weeks ahead of time. That's how fast that they wanted to get rid of him. But the more complicated decisions that the Giants needed to make was primarily the contract extension for Daniel Jones and what they were going to do with Saquon Barkley. There were a lot of options on the table, but ultimately they decided to extend Daniel Jones, paying him $40 million a year annually. I wasn't necessarily a huge fan of paying him that amount, I'm going to be honest. I mean, you guys have to remember, my base quarterback philosophy is not to pay quarterbacks big money unless if they're Patrick Mahomes caliber QBs. And I know what you guys are gonna say,
But Mike, Dak Prescott is getting paid just as much.
well, just because I'm a Dallas Cowboy fan doesn't necessarily mean I agree with all of their decisions. In the case of Daniel Jones, personally, I would have liked to see him get paid in the $30 to $35 million range. And that's primarily because the New York Giants quite literally saved his career. I mean, if Brian Daboll didn't come to town, Daniel Jones could have potentially been a backup QB for other teams at this point, and I firmly believe that. I felt like there was some gratitude that should have been paid back from Daniel Jones's camp to the New York Giants, and then the New York Giants could have potentially put a better team around him, but at the end of the day, he chose the bag, and I can't fault a man for trying to pursue the bag. But that wasn't the only decision that they decided to make. The New York Giants also swung a huge trade for the highest paid tight end in the NFL, who's on the final year of his contract, trading for Darren Waller, who is one of the best tight ends in the NFL whenever he's able to stay healthy. All they had to do was give up a third-round pick, and now Daniel Jones has a safety net whenever he's running the Giants offense. Well, what about the engine that is the Giants offense? What about Saquon Barkley? Saquon Barkley had one of his best seasons of his career after having some injury-plagued seasons sandwiched between this season and his rookie year. In Saquon Barkley's rookie year, he burst on the scene with 5 yards per carry, 11 touchdowns, over 1,300 rushing yards. He was absolutely electric. I mean, he also added 721 receiving yards that season. And the year after, he was able to rush for over 1,000 yards once again, but he missed some games due to injury. Then in 2020, once again, he only played in 2 games. When he came back in 2021, he looked like a shell of his former self, only rushing for 593 yards with a paltry 3.7 yards per carry. At that point, a lot of people were thinking that Saquon Barkley might be washed. But it's kind of crazy what could happen when you actually decide to get the New York Giants a good general manager and a good head coach that knows how to utilize Saquon Barkley, because Rich Homie Quan was able to rush for over 1,300 yards and bring in 10 touchdowns once again. There's no question in our minds that Saquon Barkley is one of the most important, if not the most important player on the New York Giants. The problem is, it's very difficult to gauge how much to pay a player like Saquon Barkley. I mean, once again, his rookie season, he was incredible. His sophomore season, he was pretty good as well. And then he had 2 bad seasons, one of them being an injury-plagued season. And now, once again, he had a really good season. You don't necessarily know what you're going to get out of Saquon Barkley. You don't know if he's going to be injured once again. And the track record against running backs doesn't necessarily look so good. So what did the New York Giants decide to do? Well, they made the intelligent decision. They decided to franchise tag Saquon Barkley. Now, the franchise tag means that a player, especially in the case of Saquon Barkley, is getting paid $10.1 million for this upcoming season. And to be honest, I feel like this is the only way that you could really go about paying your halfback properly. If you look at the NFL historically, and we've shown you the Super Bowl chart before about teams that make it to the Super Bowl and have running backs typically making a little bit less than $1 million a year, you don't want to overpay a running back. That's not a recipe for making it into the Super Bowl. As a matter of fact, the last team that won a Super Bowl with a running back that was making significant money was in 2013 when the Seattle Seahawks won against the Denver Broncos and were paying Marshawn Lynch big money to do so. And given what happened recently with Ezekiel Elliott with the Dallas Cowboys overpaying him, and as a result they had to let go of Amari Cooper and they had to make some difficult decisions in regards to how to construct their roster, I don't necessarily blame the New York Giants for this decision, and I thought it was a win-win. If Saquon Barkley balls out once again, chances are he'll get tagged once again. Chances are he'll make $10 million once again, or even more. But the thing is, Saquon Barkley doesn't want that. I also can't blame him for that, because at the same time, this is his only opportunity to get a large contract. So, as a result, Saquon Barkley is officially playing hardball, because according to Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport, originally reported by Kim Jones, I'm told Saquon Barkley will not be signing the franchise tag and therefore will not be eligible to participate when the New York Giants offseason program begins on Monday. More to come on Newsday Sports. So I'll also bring you guys what Schefter and Rap Sheet say. Giants running back Saquon Barkley does not plan to sign his franchise tender before the team's upcoming offseason program begins on Monday, making him ineligible to participate, as Kim Jones reported. Rap Sheet would say among franchise tag players, Tony Pollard has signed his tag. However, Josh Jacobs, Lamar Jackson, Saquon Barkley, and Evan Ingram have not. No signed contract means no offseason program. So in the case of Lamar Jackson, it seems like he is just trying to figure something out long long term with the Baltimore Ravens, and I'm actually convinced that that's going to get done because the Baltimore Ravens originally tagged Lamar Jackson just so they could agree upon what his value is. In Josh Jacobs' case, I don't necessarily blame him for what he's doing either, because Josh Jacobs had the best rushing season of his career, and I'm going to be honest, the Las Vegas Raiders are very volatile in general as a team. Look no further than the comparison of this past season to the season prior, and you'll get what I'm saying. The year prior, Josh Jacobs wasn't necessarily a factor. Derek Carr was playing at a remarkable level, and they were doing this all underneath a interim head coach by the name of Rich Bisaccia. And then they bring in Josh McDaniels, and things unfortunately didn't work out for them as much. In Tony Pollard's case, I don't blame him for signing the franchise tag because, well, it looks like he's going to be the bell cow halfback for the Dallas Cowboys this season now that Ezekiel Elliott is out. So maybe he could even boost his value for this next offseason and get an even bigger contract from another team. Unless the Cowboys decide to draft Bijan Robinson in the NFL draft, so we'll have to wait and see on that one. At the end of the day, what do I think is going to happen with Saquon Barkley? Well, I think the Giants are in a game of hardball. I don't really know how this is going to end, to be honest. Maybe if a team is willing to offer up the proper draft capital for Saquon Barkley, maybe a little bit more than what the 49ers gave up for Christian McCaffrey, he gets traded. But I don't necessarily see that because they had so much success with him. If he's really going to play hardball and refuse to play football unless he gets the contract that he wants, then yes, I would 100% trade him. Running backs are way too volatile in today's NFL, especially with a player that has the track record that Saquon Barkley has. I think he's electric. I love watching him. He's actually one of my favorite players in the NFL, but at the same time, there's just way too much risk to give him big money over the long term. So if you're a Giants fan especially, let me know what you would do. Should the Giants trade Saquon? Should the Giants give Saquon Barkley a long-term deal? I like to hear what you have to say. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.